She thought the human would eat her, but what he did instead left her speechless. The trap had been crude but effective. Kira's leg throbbed where the metal teeth had clamped down, and the sedative dart in her shoulder was already making her vision swim. Through the haze of pain and encroaching unconsciousness, she watched the human approach through the dense Pandoran jungle, his heavy boots crushing the bioluminescent moss beneath his feet. She had heard the stories. Every Gnostic's child knew what humans did to their captives. They dissected them in their cold metal laboratories, studying every organ, every nerve, cataloging their prey like specimens. Or worse, the whispered tales said some humans had developed a taste for Gnostic's flesh, considering it a delicacy in their off-world markets. Kira tried to hiss, to show her fangs, to maintain some dignity as a hunter even in her final moments. But the sedative had spread through her system like ice water, and all she could manage was a weak growl that died in her throat. The human stopped 3 meters away. He was large for his species, with broad shoulders and arms marked with scars that spoke of survival in hostile territories. His face was weathered, tanned by Pandora's sun, and a thick beard covered his jaw. But it was his eyes that caught Kira's attention even through her fading consciousness. They weren't cold or calculating. They looked concerned. "Easy there," he said in thickly accented Gnostics, his voice surprisingly gentle. "I'm not going to hurt you." Kira wanted to laugh at the absurdity. A human, claiming he wouldn't hurt her, while she lay trapped and helpless. The darkness at the edges of her vision grew wider, pulling her down into unconsciousness. Her last coherent thought was a prayer to Iwa that her death would be swift. When Kira's eyes fluttered open, the first thing she noticed was the absence of pain. The second was that she was lying on something soft, impossibly soft, like sleeping on a bed of moss but denser, more supportive. The third thing she noticed was the smell, strange chemical scents mixed with something organic, almost medicinal. Panic surged through her. She tried to leap up, but her body wouldn't obey. Looking down, she saw her leg had been carefully bandaged with clean white cloth, and a 4-line ran from her arm to a bag of clear liquid hanging on a metal stand beside her. She was in a human dwelling, a small cabin constructed from local wood but fitted with human technology. "You're awake. Good." The voice came from across the room. The human from the forest sat at a rough wooden table, carefully cleaning what looked like medical instruments. "You've been out for about 6 hours. I was starting to worry the sedative dose was too strong for your metabolism." Kira's hand instinctively went to her belt, searching for her knife, her bow, anything. But her weapons were gone, arranged neatly on a shelf across the room, clearly visible but far out of reach. The human noticed her searching. "Your things are safe. I'll give them back when you're ready to leave." He stood slowly, hands visible, palms open in what Kira recognized as a universal gesture of non-aggression. "I need to check your leg. The trap did some damage, and infection sets in fast in this jungle. May I?" Kira stared at him, her mind struggling to process what was happening. This didn't match any of the stories. Where was the cage? The restraints? The instruments of torture or whatever humans did to their captives? "Who are you?" she managed to rasp out in broken English, her throat dry. "Name's James Reeves," he replied, moving slowly toward her with a medical kit. "I was with the RDA about 15 years ago, if you're wondering about the human thing. Stayed behind when they evacuated. This jungle's more home to me now than Earth ever was." He knelt beside her bedding, waiting for permission before touching her leg. Kira's mind raced. A human who had abandoned his own kind? It seemed impossible. "Why?" she whispered. James's hands paused in the act of opening his medical kit. "Why did I stay? Or, why am I helping you?" He didn't wait for her to clarify. "I stayed because I couldn't go back to a dying world after seeing this place. And I'm helping you because He met her eyes directly, and Kira saw something in them she hadn't expected. Shame. Because I've seen what my people did here. The destruction. The killing. I can't undo any of that. But I can make sure one more Gnostics doesn't die because of human technology. He gestured to the trap she'd stepped in. That was meant for Thanators. I set it up to protect this area. There's a pregnant Paleolithic den about half a kilometer west. I didn't want some trophy hunter stumbling onto it. I never thought. He shook his head. I should have marked them better. This is my fault. Kira studied him as he carefully unwrapped her bandage, his touch surprisingly gentle for such large, blunt fingers. The wound had been cleaned and stitched with precision, the work of someone who knew Gnostic's anatomy. Around the cabin, she began to notice other details. Books with Gnostic's titles, botanical sketches of local plants, what looked like a shrine to Iowa constructed in the corner with offerings of woven grass and crystalline stones. You follow the way? She asked, incredulous. James smiled slightly, without looking up from his work. I'm trying to learn. Your people's connection to this world, to Iowa, it's real. I've felt it. The neural interface, the way everything's connected. He applied a fresh bandage. A Gnostic named Tsute taught me, before the war. He's probably dead now because of my people, but his lesson stuck with me. The name sent a jolt through Kira. Tsute was my uncle. James's hands froze. He looked up at her, and Kira saw genuine anguish flash across his features. Then I owe you a debt that can never be repaid. He was a warrior, a teacher. He tried to help me understand, and his voice broke slightly. I was on the wrong side when it mattered. Silence fell between them, heavy with the weight of history and loss. Kira watched this strange human who spoke her language, who honored Iowa, who had stayed behind in exile while his species fled. She thought about the stories she'd heard, about humans as monsters, as soulless machines in flesh. But here was one who had chosen differently. The leg will heal, James finally said, securing the bandage. But you need to stay off it for at least 3 days. You're welcome to remain here, or I can help you get back to your clan once you can walk. I have a radio. I can call for them if you want. Kira considered her options. Trust was not something given lightly, especially to humans. But something in James's manner, in the way he moved through this space that honored both human practicality and Gnostic spirituality, made her pause. I will stay, she said slowly. 3 days. Then we will see. Relief flickered across James's face. Thank you. I know trust is, he searched for words. I know I haven't earned it, but I'll try. Over the next 3 days, Kira watched and learned. She observed how James harvested plants, always thanking them as the Gnostics did, always taking only what was needed. She saw how he had constructed his home to minimize damage to the forest, building around trees rather than cutting them down. She noticed the notebook where he had been painstakingly translating Gnostic's wisdom teachings, trying to understand the philosophy of a people he had once helped oppress. On the evening of the second day, as they shared a meal of roasted hexapede and gathered fruits, Kira asked the question that had been nagging at her. Why do you live alone? If you follow the way, why not seek to join a clan? James was quiet for a long moment, staring into the small fire. Because I don't deserve it, he said finally. I wore RDA armor. I followed orders that got Gnostics killed. Maybe Tsute forgave me before the end. I like to think he did. But that doesn't mean I've forgiven myself. He looked at her. I stay here at the edges, trying to protect what I can. It's not redemption, but it's something. Kira felt something shift in her chest. She had grown up hating humans as a concept, as an abstract evil that had come from the stars to destroy her world. But James was not abstract. He was real, flawed, haunted by his choices, trying desperately to make amends in the only way he knew how. Sute used to say, Kira spoke softly, that I would judges us not by where we begin, but by the path we choose when we realize we have been walking in darkness. James's eyes glistened in the firelight. He said nothing, but Kira saw her words hit him like a physical force. On the morning of the fourth day, when Kira tested her weight on her injured leg and found it healing well, she made her decision. I will return to my clan, she announced. But I will tell them about you. About the human who lives alone in the forest, who protects Iowa's creatures, who seeks the way. James looked alarmed. You don't have to. My mother is the clan's Tsahik, Kira interrupted. She will want to know that one of the sky people seeks redemption. Perhaps. She hesitated, then continued. Perhaps you have been alone long enough. As Kira gathered her weapons and prepared to leave, James walked with her to the edge of his clearing. The jungle was alive with morning sounds, and streams of sunlight filtered through the canopy, illuminating the floating seeds that drifted on the breeze. Thank you, James said simply, for giving me a chance, for not judging me solely on what I was. Kira touched her fingers to her forehead in the gesture of respect. You thought I would see you as a monster, she said. But Iowa shows us that even the smallest seed can grow into the mightiest tree, if planted in willing soil. She turned to leave, then paused. James Reeves, when I return with my mother, will you be here? He smiled, a real smile that transformed his weathered face. I'll be here. I'm not going anywhere. This is home. As Kira made her way through the forest, her leg only slightly sore, she thought about the human who had defied every expectation. She had thought he would eat her, or worse. Instead, he had healed her, sheltered her, and shown her that even among humans, there could be those who chose differently. In a galaxy where species warred over resources and ideology, where prejudice ran deep as roots and hate flowed like water, perhaps the greatest miracle was this: the possibility of change, of redemption, of one broken soul reaching across the divide to help another. Kira smiled to herself as she headed home, already planning what she would tell her mother. The jungle whispered around her, and she could have sworn she felt Iowa's approval in the wind. Sometimes, she realized, the most powerful act of rebellion against hatred was simple kindness. And sometimes, the enemy you expected to destroy you might instead save you, and in doing so, save himself. The human had left her speechless not through cruelty, but through compassion. And that, Kira thought, was a story worth telling.